Hello, my friend. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Fool Rats Again, the podcast where I, Jinx, your host and imaginary friend, answers the burning question of what happens when you release a rider into the wild and he gets a chance to explore the world. So if you've ever been interested in topics such as plot development, world building, character creation, or even character motivation, then this is a podcast for you, so please stay tuned. And on this week's episode, I answer the burning question of what happens when a rider goes for a random drive through the mountains. What better way to begin than with a couple of scenarios. First one being this. Imagine you're an individual who decided to take a random drive through the mountains. You didn't know where you were going, you had no destination, but you had your ukulele with you, so you drove and you drove and you drove for a couple hours. And then you eventually came to a spot, and it was so secluded that you decided you were going to stop. You get out of the car, you pull up a chair, and you just start playing your ukulele. The scene before you is so serene that the music travels over the country and the mountains, and it's peaceful. But as you're sitting there playing, you start hearing a noise in the background that is not your ukulele. It is the sounds of heavy footsteps coming your way and the sound of crunching snow from the heavy footsteps. So, what happens next? If that's not quite the scenario for you, how about this one instead? Imagine you're an individual who has had a very rough day at work, and all you really want to do is go home. So, the day has finally come to an end. You pack up your few belongings, you hop in your car, and you start driving. But traffic is so bad and backed up that you're pretty much at a standstill. And you really want to go home. So when you see a street that has no one on it, you decide you're going to try to go that way. It might be a shortcut. It might be a detour. It might even be a longer way home. But as long as you're moving, you decide it's better than standing still. And you drive down that road for a while, and you don't see anything spectacular. It's just a straight road. Eventually, there's a turn. You take the turn. Then there's another turn. You take that turn. You hit a spot where there is a fork in the road. And you know you're supposed to go north, so you take the left fork because you think it's going to go north. And you keep driving. And you realize after a while that you don't recognize any of the scenery around you. There are no landmarks familiar to you, and you pull up a map and you realize you are now 300 miles away from home. What happens next? If you really don't want to talk about work and write about work, how about this third scenario instead? Imagine you're an individual who really just wanted to go for a drive. Society has been crushing down on you, and you figured an escape out to nature would be exactly what you need. So you hop in your car, you drive up the mountain. It's pretty warm where you're at. It's 80 or so degrees. And then you get farther up, it starts getting colder and colder, and you start seeing some snow. And finally, you hit the point where you want to. And you see that the gate is actually open. So you really can drive over the mountain pass that you've been wanting to do for the last several months, but it was closed due to snow. You pass the gate, you go farther in, and nature is as breathtaking as you want it to be. It is exactly what you needed. The serenity is there, the peacefulness, the cold chill, the remaining snow, it's all there. And it is healing you completely. It gets to the point where it's so refreshing that you lose track of time. And you look down at your watch and you realize, I have to get home. So you hop back in your car and you turn around to go home. And as you're driving down the road, you see the gate that you passed initially, it's closed, and there is no way for you to open it. What happens next? And now for my fourth scenario, because I always give one. Imagine you're an individual who really likes to camp. So you take every opportunity you can. Doesn't matter if it's warm out or if there's snow on the ground, because you have gear for all of it. So one weekend you decide to go out, and there is snow on the ground. Enough snow that people can still snowboard and ski. But that's not your sport. All you want to do is camp and enjoy nature, view the wildlife through your binoculars, enjoy a couple hot dogs roasted over the fire, marshmallows, everything like that. And you find a pretty secluded place in the mountains to camp. It's at the bottom of a mountain, and it's in the trees, and you're pretty far away from the main road. And you think you're not going to be disturbed. It's perfect. You spend a couple days there and sleep in your tent, not worried, because you know if someone tries to come up on you, you'll hear the crunching of the snow. And then one morning, you wake up super early because you hear screaming outside your tent. You go out of the tent, and you see a person who has slammed into a tree because they were snowboarding down the mountain in the dark. And you have no idea what is going on. What happens next? My friend, that should be enough for the scenarios for now. So let's move on to the story behind them. Recently, I decided to take a drive. It's been a long time since I did it, but I really like to go for random drives, especially when I need to clear my mind. I'll pick a random direction and just drive for hours. And I did that. This time the drive brought me through the mountains. But before I went, I managed to pack up a couple things. I grabbed my iPad so I can go do some graphic designs and writing. I grabbed my ukulele so I can go play up in the mountains or wherever I am, because music with no one around, fantastic. Grabbed a chair, grabbed some snacks and things like that, and just enjoyed life. My drive first brought me up to the mountains, and luckily for me, all the gates were open because the snow started melting and you could actually go by. A lot of our canyon passes where I live get closed through the winter because there's too much snow and they want to make sure people are safe and not stranded. So they closed the pass, and they closed the roads until a certain time. The gates actually got opened up a little earlier this year than I expected, so it was a good destination for me to go. And as I was going up those mountains, I'm like, there's not too many people, but it's very peaceful out here. I saw a couple elk, I saw a couple deer, lots of birds, lots of wildlife. And I'm driving, I'm like, I need to find a spot now where I can just pull over and play my ukulele for a while. Eventually I found a spot. Very secluded, off the main road, lots of snow surrounding me. Enough snow that I wouldn't want to walk through it because it was probably up to my knee at that point. But I didn't need that. All I needed was a relatively clear place for my truck, my chair, and my ukulele, which I found. And I sat there for a couple hours playing the ukulele. But as I'm playing the ukulele, I see a lot of other things. I see more animals out there, and I see tracks through the snow where animals were going and where they had been. And on the mountain across from me, I see a snowboarder because there's still enough snow that people can go down. And on top of that, my ukulele session got disturbed because I heard a helicopter above me. I look up at the helicopter and it's a life flight. Someone got injured on the mountain and they actually had to be helicoptered away because it happens. But then after that, I continued driving because I'm like, I need a new spot. This spot is a little dull for me, and I continued going down the road. And I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going, and I eventually hit a spot where I've never driven this far before. I'm like, eventually this road is going to circle back to where I know. Eventually, it did not. I drove far enough down that road that it hit a T in the road, and I chose, I'm going to go left because it's north, and north will lead me back to where I need to go. That was the wrong direction. North did not lead me back to where I needed to go. North led me to another state altogether. I ended up 300 miles away from home. So I had to backtrack a lot. If I had taken the right at that fork in the road, I would have still gone farther away than I needed to, but that was the correct direction to go so I can eventually go home. And that is the way I ended up going after a while, after I backtracked 50 miles to get back to that fork. So I drove and I kept driving more and more and more. And eventually I hit a spot where I recognize this part of the state. This is a place I've driven through. It is very far from where I live, but I'm no longer lost. And I kept driving and eventually I got home. It just took 4+ hours to get home from wherever I got lost. But I'm sure with that little story there, you can see where a lot of my scenarios came from. I pulled every scenario directly from there. None of my scenarios were too mystical today. They were more realistic. The only really mystical one was that first one where you hear crunching in the snow and some beast out there. But it doesn't really have to be because it could be just a bear, some large animal, nothing supernatural. But on the other hand, it can be. You can make it Bigfoot. You can make it some mystical creature that lives out in the snow realm. Who knows? But with that first scenario, it is told directly from my story. I drove for a couple hours with my ukulele, just like the scenario. I found a remote spot to play my ukulele, just like the scenario, and I played. And I'm sitting there playing. I'm realizing, what if someone really does sneak up on me? What if some creature is out here? Yes, I saw deer, and I saw elk. I didn't see a moose, but what if the moose was coming close? They're mean. What if a bear came close? What if I disturbed some creature with my musical instrument? I'm bad enough that it could definitely disturb some creature living out there. I wouldn't put it past it. But on that note also, what if my musical talent was so great that it actually woke something from its slumber and it came to applaud me and become my fan? And here I am going more supernatural because that is not me, but In someone's story, it could be. Some magical bard is playing out in the woods and some creature wakes up because their music and melody is so soothing and majestic. It just has to see who is playing it. Or that scenario could take so many different paths based on how well the person plays the instrument. Are they a musical god and everything wants to worship them? Are they so musically inclined that everyone has to come challenge them? Maybe they woke a sleeping nature spirit that claims to be the best musician ever, so now they're challenging each other to a contest to see who plays better. Maybe the person plays so badly that they wake a demon, because that was all that was needed for a ritual, to wake a demon that was trapped in that area. And now this demon is making a pact with the musically inclined individual to make them a better musician. Maybe the musician sells their soul at that clearing to become the best musician ever. So many different options with that. It's just a matter of how you take the direction for it. But then the second scenario of driving so far away that you're no longer close to where you live. Again, I did that exactly. I drove for 300 miles and ended up lost in the middle of the country. And I had to backtrack a lot. Is it realistic to do that after work? No, it is not. It is very unrealistic that a person who spent 8 hours at work will not know where one random road by them leads. And it's very unlikely that they would drive down that road for 3+ hours, realizing they're getting farther and farther away from their home. They just want to go home. At some point, they would turn around and backtrack. Not at 300 miles, but it got the point across. What if a person really does just go for a drive and they end up somewhere that is not familiar to them? I've done it so many different times in so many different states. I just drive because I like to drive. But what happens if I ended up lost somewhere? What if I turned that into a story idea? It's easy to do, and it makes it so there's unfamiliar terrain for someone. If you have a main character that just goes somewhere, what happens in the new place they end up? Where did they go? Are they from the country and now they're stuck in a city somewhere and they have no idea how familiar the city is? Or is it opposite? They're from a very big city and now they ended up in some small remote town that only has one gas station and one grocery store and they have no idea what's going on. Maybe there's not even a grocery store. Maybe it's just a gas station. A little small convenience store. What happens if they end up there? Simply driving randomly and taking a wrong turn can lead someone somewhere they did not expect, and that somewhere can be a very exciting place for a story. It's worthwhile to play with. Maybe they end up somewhere that there isn't a town, and now they're stuck in the woods, and maybe they took so many different turns that they can't even follow their own trail back because everything is just a mystery to them. Make it even worse. When I was driving, I encountered so many areas that there was no cell service, and I couldn't pull up my maps. So what if you bring them somewhere that they don't know because they took so many different turns and now they're off the grid and they can't even pull up their map to get home? What happens? Because now they're just lost. Do they come across a kind stranger that guides them back home, back to the main road? Or do they come across some monster or some person that is a monster or some monster disguised as a person? What happens if they encounter them? Does that monster give them the correct directions, or does that monster lead them astray? And now your main character is trapped and they're being hunted by something that wants to eat them or some other nefarious deed. What happens there? And the thing about that scenario is you don't have to make your characters be by themselves. Me, I was by myself because I went for a drive. And when I go for a drive like that, I don't bring people with me because I just want to go. I want to be alone. But if your main character, they decide to go for a drive, it happens all the time in stories. They're going to another city to see a sports event or some theater or something like that, and their group of friends, they decide they're going to go there, but they end up stuck in traffic. So they take the off ramp and go the back roads, and they end up somewhere that they didn't know where they were going to go, and they have no idea where they are now. And that is the beginning of many stories. So why can't you use that as the beginning of your story? You can change it up completely to be your own thing. Everyone ends up somewhere. You don't know where it is. Just change the setting, where they're from, where they're going. Maybe the story starts in reverse and they're lost and they're trying to get home. And you use flashbacks to explain how they got to where they are. What happens there? Maybe they find some place that they actually really love and they just want to stay. That the new location is everything they ever dreamed of and wished for, and the people are nice and they just want to live there, so they stay. What happens there? Maybe it's not even your main character. Maybe your main character's friend took the drive and now your main character is trying to track them down because they think everyone got lost, and now they're worried that their best friend is injured somewhere in the country. Now they have everyone tracking them down. The police are tracking them down. Private detectives are tracking them down. Everyone is trying to find the friend that's not lost. They're just happy where they are and they can't contact everyone else. A lot of possibilities there. As for the other scenario of the gates being open and the gate being closed, I've never actually seen that happen, but it is a fear of mine. The gates do get opened at a certain time of year and they get closed. And I've always wondered whenever I drive through them, what if the gate is closed when I come back? Will I simply be able to open it again and drive through? Or will I be stuck wherever I'm at? I'd absolutely hate to be stuck on the opposite side of the gate and not be able to go home because I was dumb enough not to check if the gate was going to close. There are lots of ideas there. It's very similar to the last scenario in regard to what happens if you're just trapped somewhere that you don't know how to get home. You can make it a whole bunch of options. You can make it a survival story. You can make it where they're being hunted and they can't get past the gate now. You can combine it with other ideas that they went there and now they're trapped and they're trying to escape and run from the monster. But now they're also blocked by a gate that they can't get past. What happens? Make it another survival type where they know that the gate will open again at some point, so they just have to survive long enough for the gate to open. But they didn't bring enough supplies with them, so they have to live off the land. They have to find something to double as a shelter. They could stay in their vehicle, but what if their vehicle is somewhere else? Or they took, say, a motorcycle for a drive and they don't have a vehicle to stay in. Now they have to find somewhere in the surrounding area to double as that. But throw in another element and there's snow. So now they have to find a place that is warm and secluded and protect against the snow and the other elements. And now they have to track down food and they have to make a fire to stay warm and all this stuff. And they're surviving till the gate opens. They don't know how long that's going to be. Maybe the gate never opens, so they have to prepare to trek down the mountain in the snow and the cold. Maybe they're trying to stave off the cold until the snow actually melts and it's actually spring. Maybe they have to stay in their little cave that they managed to find until it is actually good weather to trek down the mountain. There's a lot of possibilities just because you encountered a closed gate. What happens with it? Maybe the gate is simple enough and they realize, oh look, I can just crawl over it or under it and continue walking down the road. I might not be able to bring my vehicle with me because it's blocking that, but I can still continue on foot until I find someone to pick me up in a car and drive me the rest of the way. Now you're hitchhiking. Maybe your main character picks up a hitchhiker that this exactly happened to. What happens to them? It's again a change of perspective. What if your main character isn't the one that got stuck by the gate, but some side character? Is the side character good and they were actually truly wanting to escape, and your main character is just so confused and nervous around them that they picked up a hitchhiker in the frozen wasteland? It's possible. It leads to a lot of different story ideas, and that's what inspiration is about. Inspiration just inspires you for so many different things based on what you're thinking at the time and randomly encounter. I never know what I'm going to encounter with my inspiration. I never know what ideas are going to come to mind just because you encounter something. Who would have thought that there were so many different ideas just from running into a closed gate? Not me. Not until I thought about it and realized, oh look, I can do so much with this story. But I still have another scenario to go over, and that is the camping and snowboarder. This one also came more or less directly from my story. As I was sitting there playing my ukulele in my clearing, I watched a snowboarder go down the mountain. And as I'm sitting there, I also watched a helicopter go because they needed to pick someone up that was injured. I don't know if those two were related at all. The snowboarder could have been perfectly fine and the helicopter was going to find someone else, but they could be related that snowboarder got injured and there was no way for them to get out of their situation safely or quickly because they're hurt, and trying to get an ambulance up there to drive down the mountain again would take so much longer than trying to get a helicopter up there to pick them up and take them to a hospital. But in my scenario, I changed the stakes a little bit. What if it was the main character that encountered the snowboarder that was injured? What do they do? your main character has already admitted that he is so far off the grid because he wanted to be completely away from society and people that he's just hiding. So if he encountered a random person, he doesn't know what to do. It would take him just as long to get that injured snowboarder down the mountain into a hospital as it would for anywhere else. But can your main character also call for medical personnel? Is he so far off the beaten path that there is no cell service and he can't even call a helicopter? So he has to take care of the snowboarder that is injured. Does the snowboarder live? If the snowboarder lives, what happens? Is the snowboarder eternally grateful to your main character for helping them and letting them survive when they were completely injured? Or does the snowboarder not survive? What does your main character do in that situation? They tried so hard to help the snowboarder that they poured out all their supplies and their energy and all this, and the snowboarder still passed away. Does your main character admit this to society? Does your main character bring the snowboarder's body down the mountain so they can report to the authorities what happened? Or is your main character completely nervous that they'd be blamed, so they leave the snowboarder where they were and pray that no one discovers them, at least until spring comes and the snow melts, so there's no traces of your main character there? What happens in that situation? Does someone track down the snowboarder and realize, oh, look, this was someone's camping spot? Maybe the person who was camping here did something, so now someone's hunting your main character because your main character didn't report that they encountered a snowboarder that got injured. Maybe everyone in the world thinks your main character killed the snowboarder because the snowboarder was so good at snowboarding that they would never get injured like they did. There's simply no way it could be, and now it's just a giant misunderstanding that your main character has to try to resolve, but no one's listening to him because there's so many possibilities there too. What happens? As I've said, there are so many different possibilities that arrive just from changing perspective or asking what if. I went for a random drive through the mountains and I encountered a lot of different things that seem simple on the outside, but they can lead to so many different unique story ideas. Just because I started asking the questions of what if, or if I change the perspective around, what if this happens, or what if my main character encountered this because someone else experienced this. And I don't plan on writing all these ideas because there's just too many ideas for me. But I'm excited by the idea of these ideas and the possibility that these ideas could become stories. These are all stories I would want to read simply because I went for a drive and encountered things. I needed to clear my mind, and I came back with more ideas than I left with. What does your random drive bring you? Are you going to encounter many ideas that could be used for story points and plots? Who knows? I hope so, because inspiration comes from everywhere. It's just a matter of looking for it and asking the right questions. But my friend, it is getting to that point of the episode where I have to start calling it a day. Though before I do, I have a writing prompt for you. Write a story about an individual who picks up a hitchhiker who claims their car is stuck because it's behind a locked gate. I don't care the genre. It could be horror, it could be fantasy, it could be romance. And I don't care the format, whether it's poetry, fiction, a song, or even a journal entry. As always, all I really care about is you have fun with it and make the most out of it. But now I really do have to let you go, my friend. If you enjoyed the content of this week's episode, please give me a follow. And if you want any more content from the Jinks'd world, visit my website at jinxedworld.com. That is JINKSDWORLD.com. Until next time, enjoy your writing.